I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. Let's all be very kind and respectful and really stay focused. This meeting is a contract meeting. So what we're talking about is the contract and the new terms that we negotiated, and any questions or any confusion that you guys have of any of those terms. So let's just remember that we're all here in a positive, because we're going to be learning a lot, and we're going to be positive. And with that being said, we will start with introductions from the dais over here with...
Starting with me, thank you. My name is Beth Haynes. I'm the director of the commercials department.
Hi, Dan Bowser, Associate National Director, Television, New Media, Entertainment Contracts.
Jen Gaudry, National Director, Residuals Claims.
Sherika Randle.
Go ahead.
Sherika Randle, Senior Business Representative in Stunt Safety Department.
Lon Huber, Senior Business Representative and Auditor in Theatrical.
Jessica Johnson, Senior Business Representative and Auditor in Theatrical as well.
So if you didn't catch that, we have commercials, television, residuals, stunt and safety, theatrical. So we got it covered tonight for you guys, all right? So a lot of you sent in some questions. So what we did is we kind of sorted them all out to the different departments. And because I really want to hear mainly from you guys tonight and have your specific questions if they weren't covered, or if you didn't choose to include a question. So I said to staff, let's give you 5 minutes to try to cover some of the questions that you were presented, and then we're going to open it up to the mics, mic 1, mic 2. Because it is only questions, we're not having a timer tonight, because when we have comments, then we have to have a timer. All right, so why don't we start with you, Beth?
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jane. So the first question I had is how stunt adjustments figure into overtime calculations on the commercials contract. And I don't know if any of you have our beautiful commercials contract, but on page 90, under stunt adjustments, it says that overtime compensation on an adjustment day shall be based on the performer's aggregate compensation for the day. So overtime, and I don't know if the person that asked the question is in the room, but overtime is based on combining your session fee and your stunt adjustment fee. And to note, that does not apply to travel. Travel is based on the single session payment. So, next question, I will go on. The next question had to do with precision driving crossing over to stunt. And this has been a topic forever. Under our commercials contract, there is no such term as precision driver. What I believe happens is that producers want the level of driving that, can cross over to stunt, but they don't want to pay or hire someone as a stunt driver. I put out in the front, we had put this bulletin out, I want to say in 2016, and it talks about precision driving and that there is no actual term precision driving. There is a vehicle driver and a stunt driver, those two terms. I know that drivers are put under some pressure on the set being hired as precision drivers when, maybe they know that category is not accurate. If that's the case, you can certainly give our office a call, and we can give a call to production. We never release a performer's name. When we're called, we say, we've received a report that drivers are being hired as precision drivers, and that term is not accurate. So,
Is that number that they should call?
They can call, and I have business cards up here. The number is 323-549-6858. And like I said, this is at the front when you come in, and it also has the stunt driving guidelines on here. So if you're hired as a precision driver, but any of these provisions occur, then you should be categorized as a stunt driver.
And then before you go on, because this precision thing is just a spur in my saddle, I've been working with this P word thing for 12 years, ever since I started on this. And every 2 years, there's a resurgence of production wanting to use the P word. We don't use that word because that word doesn't exist. And so it seems like that if it's coming up again, it's our responsibility as members. I encourage you, please have that sheet in your bag. And if you do get any pushback on it, that's what, just say, hey, you know what, I can't break the rules of my union. Put it on us, okay? We're the bad guys that they're saying, no, you can't do this, okay? And you guys are the innocent, so.
Okay. Yeah, well, the third question I had also had to do with precision driving, so, I'll pass on that, and then after everyone's spoke, then if you have further questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, Beth. Dan?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm just traveling from the west side. That traffic is awful. I'm sorry about that for just arriving late. But I'm going to start with question number 7. This is really pertaining to the new rules for travel pay. As you guys know, in 2017, we entered the TV theatrical contract negotiations with the AMPTP, which is the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. One of the most significant changes for television, for performers who are working under television agreements, is the rules of travel. In regards to travel, there are rules pertaining to payment, where across the board, there's a $500 travel allowance. Prior to the 2017 the negotiations, depending on the location of the performer, whether you're LA-based, there were rules pertaining to performers receiving a day of pay for travel. But then there were rules where performers who were not from LA, who were traveling to producers' base, that was a $75 travel allowance. There's a big disparity between the two pays. So 2017, the whole purpose was really to equalize, just the pay across the board, to really just make travel, these agreements have been around for over like 60 to 70 years, and we wanted to really just update the rules. And one of the rules was really just to, across the board, to have a travel allowance. And this travel allowance is not subject to pension and health. As previous, prior to 2017, it's just $500 traveling to and from the location. It doesn't apply if you're traveling to Los Angeles. There's no travel pay. It's really if you're going outside of LA. For instance, if you're going to LA, you're going to New York, that is a $500 travel pay. If you're coming from New York to LA, there's no travel pay involved for that.
And then also for clarification on that, so this $500 travel pay or travel allowance, it does not go to your pension and health contributions, nor does it go towards your residuals.
Right. That travel, that's for for your travel pay there. So essentially, it covers going to the location or producer's base, and it also covers going back home. So
So for clarification, so say you're working, you travel, you work, you travel. Instead of getting a 3-day contract, you get a $500 travel allowance. You get your daily that you work, and then you get another travel allowance day.
yeah.
So that's 500 daily, 500 instead of a 3-day contract.
The producer also, the language in the agreement states that if you're otherwise not compensated, so if in your example, Jane, the producer, if they are using the performer for 1 day, they may put the performer under a 3-day contract where they're using, that contract, to pay them the 3-day contract rather than paying the $500 travel allowances, because if their start date is like, let's say it's Monday, they want you to travel on Monday and you work on Tuesday, you travel back on Wednesday, and they put you on a 3-day contract, which starts Monday, because you're being paid under a 3-day contract, there would not be a requirement for the producer to pay the $500 travel allowance. It's only due when the performer is otherwise not being compensated or really not working under their contract, within their contract. In addition to the rules for travel pay, there are changes in regards to work time. When performers are going to producers' base, that's basically the primary area where production is taking place for television. If you're, let's say you're in Vancouver, I understand prior to the new changes, it was a portal-to-portal basis, but now if you're going to producer's base, the work time is set to set, meaning the clock starts when you arrive to set and it ends when you clock out. So that time used to being picked up from the hotel or being dropped back off to the hotel, that's not compensable time, which would not trigger any rest period, overtime, or things of that nature if you're going to a producer's base.
Wait. We're going to go through everything. Hold your questions, and then we're going to come to the mics to ask the questions. Thank you. So remember it. Thanks.
Okay. In addition to another change in travel, before there were 3, if you're traveling and then there's some downtime, there's up to 3 days of intervening time in which the performer can be paid $75 per day until they are required to be put on the contract. That time has been reduced to 2 days, and the rate has been increased to $100. So if you're traveling on Monday and you don't start until Thursday, the producer for Tuesday and Wednesday can pay you $100. It's idle day, essentially, where you just not required to do any type of work. They pay you $100 for those 2 days. And then on Thursday, that's the day in which they have to put you on the clock. So that's been reduced compared to three days of $75 prior to the 2017 negotiations. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else. I can answer any further questions, but that is really the most significant changes with travel. I think the next question is new media contracts. It's not really a question, it just states new media contracts. I know there's questions in regards to rates. What I can say for performers working under new media contracts, there's a fluctuation in rates. It really depends on the budget. If we're dealing with a project that's under $50,000, and this is and these agreements I'm speaking to independent agreements. There's different rules if we're dealing with a project that's produced by a company under AMPTP, such as CBS, where everything's negotiable if it's below 1.3 million. But in regards to an independent project, let's say the rate is, the budget is under $50,000. For those rates, the minimum rate would be $125, which may be deferred. As the budget increased, the minimum rates increase. And again, this was presented to the Television Standing Committee, which has been it's been approved, and all of these rates are on our website. If you go under contracts, then new media, and then look at agreements, there are 3 agreements. One's a special new media agreement, which covers projects above $50,000. And there on the last page, you will see all the rates in regards to the budgets and the rates for each budget. In regards for, okay. In regards to stunt coordinators, that rate will always be the full TV rate, regardless of budget, just due to concerns for safety. We want to make sure we hire the proper trained stunt coordinator. But in regards to any other stunt performer type, it depends on the budget. As well as the terms and conditions, it depends on the level of the budget. The higher the budget, you're going to have terms that are closer to working under a television agreement. Okay, let's see. Okay, the next question is setting up a stunt performer job submission page for film and TV work. What we do right now, we have a monthly show sheet, which provides information on all the shows that are television shows that are in production. It's a national show sheet, comes out every month. It's on the website. It covers every show that's that's shot in America. I mean, I think Theatrical has the same information as well. It lists the show, the casting director, and also just the location in which the production is being filmed.
Where can they find that on the website? And
Sorry.
by the way, I don't know if any of you have checked it out, but our new website launched.
Yeah.
And it's like you actually can find stuff on it. It's really, really like streamlined, and it's like not all, check it out. So I've used it twice already in the last 24 hours.
The search will return what you're looking for. The search function is really what they focused on a lot. So as opposed to having to go hunting around, if you just go straight to the search box, you're much more likely to get what you need quickly.
Right, it's really easy to navigate through it, and that was the one thing, because they kind of tested it on me 3 months ago, and my only concern was contract information. How do I get contract information? Is it easy to get contract information? And it was, actually. So check it out. If you do find anything that you would like to comment or critique on it, let us know, and because we're still kind of working on it, again, ironing out the wrinkles. So sorry to interrupt you, Dan.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. I haven't had a chance to really navigate the new website, but I would just, to be safe, just do a search, and it should pop up. Okay, the next question. Can paperwork be provided showing what TV shows contribute to the SAG pension and health pension plan, and what TV shows contribute to the AFTRA fund? In regards to just allocations, mostly every show, if it was produced after 2016, dramatic programs are going to contribute to the SAG pension plan, with the exception of 1 hour dramatic basic cable shows, television programs, that will go to the AFTRA fund. Non-dramatic programs such as variety shows, talk shows, that will contribute to the AFTRA fund. New media programs made for new media, that's going to be pension health, and dramatic programs made for new media. I believe we did have an allocation sheet on the website prior to the revamping, and I'm sure it's still on there. I would just recommend doing a search. I will leave my card too if anyone has any questions. I will just see if I can find it myself and give you the exact location on the website, on the new website. The final question, summarize the terms of the Uptown agreement with Nickelodeon. Let's see, percentage of scale, what is the percentage of scale that's being paid now? And does it follow the same schedules A, et cetera, in regards to daily, 3-day, and weekly? And the answer is yes. One thing about the Uptown agreement, it does follow schedules A, B, and C, but there is a reduction in regards to the rates. For instance, let me just look. All right, go ahead. Okay, for instance, there's for programs that are for the first year, for if this is the new agreement, we just reached the agreement July 17, 2017. That's going to last through 2021. The rates are, for the first year, 80% of the SAG-AFTRA rate. So if we're talking about day rate, the current day rate is $956. If you're working under Uptown agreement, that's going to be 80% of that. And if you're on a weekly contract, the same, formula, as well as 3-day. In regard, I would let Jen, in regards for replays and things of that nature, I would just let Jen talk more about that for residuals. But just to give you just context of the rate, the rates are just it's a reduced rate.
Great, thanks, Dan. Before we get to Jen, Cedric Jackson is sitting right here. Cedric, I thought you were going to be sitting over there. I thought you went out to do something. So I know there's a. Okay, well, anyway, so Cedric, you guys, there's Cedric Jackson, who's the head of the Stunt and Safety right now. So sorry about that. I know, I'm like, oh, I thought he was out in the lobby or something. So we're going to take actually, you know what, before we do Cedric, we'll do Jen, then we'll do Cedric, then we'll, okay.
All right, so I guess if anybody has specific questions around residuals related to independently negotiated basic cable agreements that are sort of carryovers from days gone by, I'm happy to answer them for anybody who's on those shows. Otherwise, I'm not going to take time here to go into those specifics. But the sort of more general questions here that I have, one is direct deposit and, you know, checks, the time it takes to process checks. So first of all, full disclosure, I'm not actually over the processing department. My department works very closely with them, but they have a completely separate reporting structure. I will say, though, related to direct deposit, we are right now sort of in a very quiet little pilot program that is routing checks to direct deposit for certain members in some of our smaller locals. So we're testing that at the moment, and we are we've entered into a contract with a company called Residuals, who is working with, at the moment, one of the major payroll houses to try to launch what will be, rather than just sort of a check routing, where we are still getting physical checks and we are routing them to direct deposit for performers, that instead would be a full electronic reporting and actual direct deposit that would hopefully sort of cut down on processing time, though a lot of that is our own internal improvements. I know from talking to people in processing, that's been a high priority. They've reduced the turnaround time, improved systems, changed things up, gone more and more electronic. So around direct deposit, just know we're quietly testing it. Assuming it all goes well, we'll expand it, and assuming that this company that we're working with can actually bring partners in, it will actually happen. The challenge is we're not in complete control of that, so it requires a little bit of cooperation, but from our side of it, as much control as we have, it's happening.
And it's really exciting because we've started working on this, what, about 2 years ago?
Well, with this particular company, I think it was probably more like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But this has obviously been something we've been trying to get off the ground for over a decade, and we are closer now than we've ever been. So.
Yeah, but just know that because LA is the largest local, we're starting with the small ones first.
Yeah, we want to make sure that the whole system doesn't.
Right.
We need to make sure it works before we start down a road that then creates more problems than it solves. The next question is, it said, our residuals continue to go down and be less a part of our annual pay. Are we looking to remedy this? So this is a sort of a new development, because in the aggregate, more residuals are being paid into the union than have ever been paid previously. The actual dollars that are being paid on behalf of performers in the form of residuals is higher than it's ever been. The challenge is that on an individual basis, people are feeling like they're seeing less to themselves individually. So that's sort of more a function of the changing landscape than it is sort of dollars that are being paid for use. So we have network primetime reruns sort of not happening as much, even though the ceilings there are higher than they've ever been. We've got basic cable residuals that are coming. We've got all sorts of things coming in, but the challenge is there's so many more platforms. It's caused sort of a dilution of some of the values of those licenses, and so it is resulting in smaller payments for when things are up in new media a longer period of time. And it is really a function of the marketplace rather than a function of the companies actually paying less, because in the aggregate, the companies are paying more in residuals than they ever have. But we are looking at that, because obviously the impact to an individual is, if anything, more important than the impact in the aggregate. So we're looking to try to address various terms of the contracts and different, sort of avenues of how things are distributed and how they're paid. So we are considering that, but just so you have the big picture, that's sort of the challenge we face as well, because when we say to the companies, you need to pay more in residuals, they sort of say, well, we're already paying more than we've ever paid in the past. Why are you complaining? So it is a circumstance where you kind of have to look at it from the perspective of individual performers and then be able to find a way that's going to work so that individuals feel like they're being compensated fairly, but we can also, find a way to make that position known to the companies and actually achieve something in negotiations on that front. So that's what's happening there. And then the last, actually sort of commingled with those, and then the last question is about new media residuals, and I think one question actually said, is Netflix ever going to pay residuals? So we actually get all sorts of residuals from Netflix. You probably have received residuals from Netflix. You might not actually know that because when you get your statement, it wouldn't say Netflix is paying the residuals. But anytime you get a statement that says you're getting residuals for internet rental, that's kind of how it gets coded when it goes through our processing, that is the SVOD platforms, right? So that's Netflix, that's Hulu and the subscriber base, it's Amazon Prime, it's any of those subscriber-based platforms. When you see payments coming in that say internet rental, that's that platform or one of those platforms paying. It's really the producers who are paying on behalf of them. Occasionally, it'll say Amazon is paying, but really when it says internet rental, we're getting those residuals for you. And then around the new media contracts, we've got sort of the only time you wouldn't be getting residuals for a show that's being exhibited in new media is if it's truly a low budget made for new media show. And the threshold is the budget of the show has to be if we're talking about the studios here, right? So independent agreements, sometimes they're a little bit different. For the studios, the threshold is the budget needs to be $25,000 per minute as exhibited. So you can kind of do the math. But as long as the budget at least reaches that threshold, then when the show is exhibited on paid platforms, residuals are due. And then we're making all sorts of improvements as things go along. There's still a little bit of the Wild West happening there, but absolutely we get residuals for new media use every day, and particularly if it's a theatrical motion picture or television show and it moves over to SVOD or AVOD or electronic sell-through, there are already formulas in place and residuals do.
Thank you. Cedric?
Good evening, everyone. Some of you had sent questions in prior or while registering, and I'm going to go over a few of those questions. The first one is, where in our contract does it talk about not photographed NP on features? I cannot find anywhere in our contracts that production is allowed to put that on our Exhibit G. Well, the term not photographed is used in the way we view it by production as a means of tracking, their payroll as the person is not photographed. However, that does not mean that if you are photographed and your image and likeness is captured, that you are not eligible for residuals, because you are, as long as you meet those qualifications. The SAG-AFTRA agreements are the controlling documents. We do know, and we have noticed the trend more and more, they're putting Exhibit G, they're putting NP on Exhibit Gs, and even also extending those contracts. In that case, what we ask is that performers do take a picture of your Exhibit G, do take a picture of your contract, because that may come in handy later as claims need to be filed. However, it is not a matter of us, allowing them. They certainly have the right to do that, but what they don't have a right to do is put non-photographed on the G, and then in turn, you are photographed, and then say, well, no, oh no, right here it says not photographed. So make sure you keep documentation, and it doesn't hurt to give us a call to let us know that that is going on and that's happening. if you think something's suspicious with it, because we can always make a phone call to production and say, what is this, just so that they're aware. That also lets them know that we're aware that they're doing it. And then the next question is, if you're hired as a driver under the stunt performer's contract and you have non-stunt passengers in the same vehicle, what is the safety protocol, especially when shooting on location, the streets of Los Angeles, and not on a studio lot? Well, if you're hired as a stunt driver and you are not performing a stunt, the stunt, it doesn't come up to the level of what is described as stunt driving, then the safety protocols are as they would be with any shot that you'd have on your seat belt, and just obey the laws on the state of California because it says they're out on the street. That would probably be the strictest at that particular point, because you are the stunt driver, and obviously they hired a stunt driver because they wanted a professional driver just for safety reasons. However, if the speeds become excessive, if the vision is blocked, if the car loses traction, then that passenger should be on a stunt contract. As a matter of fact, I would have a problem with them not having a stunt performer instead of just a regular background or something like that in the car with the driver to begin with. But oftentimes, we don't know, and people need to call, performers need to call the department and let us know what situation you're faced with. Because again, if it's just pulling up to a stop sign, that's one thing. If it's going 75 miles an hour, doing a U-skid and stopping on the mark, that's something totally different. And that's what we would have to address. Let's see. Then here's a question about minorities working in stunt. What is the percentage of work being done by stunt performers of color compared to white stunt performers? Well, we're just now getting into trying to capture some of that data. Right now, we do not have that data. We did go out with a cursory survey amongst all the stunt coordinators and performers that we did send out, and we got some rudimentary data back, but we actually have one of our people in our department that puts together statistics beginning to look at that to see if she can formulate what that may look like from the data that we already have. And in that respect, I want to talk about something that's happening in the industry, and just so that everyone's aware of it, this is one of the hot buttons, if you will. Out of our general provision, section 11C, it says producer agrees that no waiver by any performer of any term of this agreement, including the appropriate schedule, one more time, including the appropriate schedule, shall be requested of the performer or effective unless the consent of the union is first had and obtained. There is things going on out there where we have producers, and whether it's on the producer side or whether it's on the performer side, it should not be happening, that they are saying, come and we will employ you and we will place you on a K3 flat deal stunt coordinator contract, even though you're just a stunt performer. They want to place you on a flat deal. The money is there, but the things that are being given up for that and the confusion that it creates and the possible problems that it can create are just endless. So, for example, they take you and they say, we're going to place you on a flat deal stunt coordinator K3 contract. You're overseas somewhere, and you notice that you're only getting 9-hour turnarounds. Well, wait a minute, I'm a stunt performer. I get 12-hour turnarounds. Well, no, the K3 flat deal says 9-hour turnarounds. So the things that you are trying to say, now we encourage that you would file claims on things like that, but it begins with not accepting an agreement, because we heard that in the direct contract language. It begins with not accepting that agreement in the first place. Again, it creates a lot of problems, and it's very difficult to straighten out, because the calls are already coming from some performers that have done that because you're getting away with overtime. They're getting away with overtime, and you can expect to work quite a bit of overtime on the high-end shows if they're sending you overseas. They're saving quite a bit of money, if they feel that they can hire you on a K-3. But it really looks bad when we get call sheets and things like that, and we see that there are 30 stunt coordinators on a project. It just doesn't look good, and then they have to face the wrath of Jennifer Gaudry if they, as she.
No, I mean, that's actually a challenge. So if I can interrupt for a minute. We have had in the last few years circumstances where we had people who were engaged on the flat deal as coordinators who were then omitted when residuals were paid. And the response that we got from a couple of the companies was that person wasn't actually coordinator. So we took a look at how they were credited. They had coordinator as some part of their title in the credits, and they said, well, demonstrate to us what they did that actually was coordinating. And I don't want to get into that argument with the companies, right? So I said, you tell me why you would engage someone on a coordinator contract if they weren't coordinating. Are you telling me that you put them on the wrong contract? So because as soon as they say to me they've put the person on the wrong contract, they open themselves up so we can go after all of that comp that would have been due, right? Overtime and rest and everything else. So they backed off of that position and they added them to the residuals cast list. The challenge is I can't reasonably take that position when you have clearly people on that contract who shouldn't be. It is not reasonable to think that you had 10 coordinators on a show and 1 driver, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm not going to be able to make that argument anymore, and my concern is that it's going to put us in a position where we're going to have to justify getting residuals for coordinators who work on the flat deal because now we have people who are working under that contract who shouldn't be. So it opens up, it causes all sorts of problems from that perspective. Ultimately, it will not guarantee that everybody who works on that contract gets residuals. It just won't, because that's the other thing. I mean, we have an equal duty to everybody who's in the cast, and we can't knowingly have somebody included in residuals at a rate where they shouldn't have been, just like we don't want people to not get overtime when they should. I mean, the problems are they go both ways, right? So that's why he brings it up, and that's why he mentions me, because I've successfully resolved some claims around that issue, but with the trend that we're seeing now, it's gonna make it impossible for me to be successful, so.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
And last but not least, other than with the commercials department, first of all, I'm happy to announce that we are hiring another business rep for the Stunt and Safety Department.
Yay.
And with that, I'm going to encourage that everyone, if you have issues around stunts and safety, to give the Stunt and Safety Department a call, other than the commercials department. We're here to help you, we're here to serve you, and we need to know what's going on out there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Cedric. Next.
Did you all see how happy I was when he said
Yes.
that? If a stunt coordinator is on set, if a stunt is taking place on set, then a stunt coordinator should be on set. And we do have language that supports, in general provisions, we do have language that supports producers being able to hire a qualified stunt performer to perform any type of work that has to do with stunt. And a coordinator is on set so they can let the production know if, in fact, the actress or actor can perform the stunt themselves. So that's what the coordinator is on the set for. And 9 out of 10, I haven't really had anything happen like this lately, but if it does, the coordinator is there to kind of say, you know what, you need to bring in a stunt performer for this. Another question I had was, how are adjustments given? They are normally negotiated between the stunt coordinator and the performer. And they added on to that question, are the adjustments given to each person fairly? Meaning, if Jane and I both had to do the same stunt, will we get the same adjustment? That answer is no. It is based on, I am sure, the experience of the stunt performer. So if Jane has so many years in and I'm coming in, maybe 2 years, then that adjustment may be different. But it is negotiated between the stunt coordinator and the performer. And one more I had was, I do various figure skating stunts. How do I know when this is a stunt pay or not? To that question, if the work is choreographed, then it qualifies you to be a principal performer. And if you think that you did something beyond principal work, then you will then need to contact us, and we will then look into it to see if it's something that justified and you need some type of stunt adjustment. And if you do need a stunt adjustment, it will be a day's pay.
Great, thank you. Okay, Lon and Jessica, I don't know how you're splitting them up, so.
We are a tag team.
Okay,
You're it.
Okay. So I'm going to start kind of more broadly, and one of the, the first kind of question that came to us is, can we talk about the changes based on the 2017 contract? And the truth of the matter is the evolution and the changing is mostly happening in TV new media, and Dan already talked about that. There are some changes in theatrical, but theatrical is a little more set in its ways. It doesn't, it's not evolving quite as much as television and new media are. One thing that I thought you would all like to know is the new rates starting July 1st. So for stunt performers and coordinators, that would be a day rate of $980, a weekly rate of $3,655, and the K3 stunt coordinator flat is $1,524 a day and $6,012 a week. Again, that should be used appropriately. Those are the theatrical rates. Again, the theatrical stunt performer rates, there are low-budget contracts that have reduced rates, but coordinators should always be paid the basic agreement rates regardless of the budget level of the project in the interest of safety. One question that's come up a lot recently is about how weekly overtime is calculated, so I'm going to tag back to Lon to address that one.
Yeah, we have had several questions come in from stunt performers regarding weekly overtime and how it's calculated. There's some confusion with the concept that, in my mind, is very simple and straightforward in theatrical, because that's where I've lived for a long time, but it's different in television, and so that can get confused. And one thing we like about getting calls from the stunt community is that, by and large, you're much better informed and pay much closer attention to what you're doing and to your contracts. So we do appreciate that. The week under the SAG-AFTRA contracts is a 5-day, 44-hour week. So it's not your standard 40-hour week, it's a 44-hour week. That's a nod to what it takes to make a movie, basically. And the producer, for your minimum rate for that, buys 44 hours within a block of 5 10-hour days. And this is in the theatrical contracts. It's also in television. So up to 10 hours a day, you're on weekly time. You could, if you were hired on Monday, you could work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10-hour days. That's 40 hours. You're not into weekly overtime yet, but you'd only have 4 hours left over for Friday. Anything beyond that would be weekly overtime at time and a half your hourly rate. Your hourly rate would be the weekly rate divided by 44 hours. Under television, it's still a 5-day, 44-hour work week, but the producer can only go over 8 hours on 2 days without incurring overtime. So a stunt performer who was working and contacted me recently, I want to say it was yesterday, had the understanding that under a weekly contract he has 2 10-hour days and 3 8-hour days. That adds up to 44, and he's right. That's television. And so beyond 8 hours on those additional days, it's going to be time and a half of weekly overtime. It'll be the same money if you worked 5 10-hour days on television or on a theatrical contract, even though the minimum rates may be different, but in terms of the calculation, it would be the same. The thing about television is the producer or the production company can put those 2 free hours, they call them, they can have 2 free days, the full 10-hour days, on any day in your work week. And so they're looking at that after you've worked it, and they're not going to give it for the day you worked 9 hours if there are 2 days when you worked 10 hours, right? And that's how that works. That's it in a nutshell. Now, that is always flipped around and convoluted by 2 things. One, this is your work week. If your work week starts on a Wednesday, you're going to get the same pay, but it's going to be split across 2 pay periods, so you're going to see a partial check followed by another check that makes up the difference. And there are times, especially when you have stunt adjustments involved, where that's all going to go fluky, because if you're on a Wednesday through Tuesday work week and you have a big stunt adjustment on the Monday, that stunt adjustment is calculated and the aggregate goes into your weekly rate for the work all the way back to Tuesday and moving forward. And so a production company that has a check due on Thursday following the Sunday through Saturday where you did the work, they won't have time to put in that bump for the stunt adjustment you did on Tuesday before they get you your check on Thursday. And so that'll have to be made up down the line too. And that's the beauty and the joy of calculating stunt payroll in a nutshell. One difference, I think Dan gave you a good overview of the changes in travel. That $75 day for travel that went away, we still have that in theatrical. We're kind of old school. They started this, and where the concept was, as Dan pointed out, to simplify and make everything the same, that didn't happen. So we kind of diverged. We'll probably be coming around to that in subsequent negotiations, but in the meantime, we still have the concept that if you're flown in from New York to work in LA, don't we? It's even confused me. But there's still that thing that if you're coming to a producer's base in Hollywood, which is what we consider the producer's base, they can pay you if you're hired from somewhere other than California, and it's very California-centric thing, travel is, in the old book. And that came in 1938, the language. So that's where we live. So if you come in then, you have a $75 day coming in, and you're essentially working on a local shoot because you're coming to Hollywood, and that's where we make movies. And so you're on a 5-day, 44-hour work week. Yeah, well, you know, it's the concept from 1938. 1938, people. So we're still there. What happened in television was that producer's base was defined differently for television. But we aren't there yet with theatrical contracts.
So for clarification on that, Lon,
Yeah.
because we defined in TV, the producer's base is basically anywhere where production is happening in
Is
television.
right.
But in theatrical, if they're traveling a performer from Los Angeles to, say, Atlanta, isn't that, they get like, their contract starts on their travel day, correct?
What?
And they
I'm gonna
don't
say
get the 75
Yeah,
because producer's base is only Los Angeles.
Right. Atlanta is also Tyler Perry, which is, if that's not his base, you know, that's clearly his base. Where we get it a lot is Fox is shooting The Greatest Showman entirely in Brooklyn and in the Manhattan area. That's not their base. If they were shooting a television show, The Greatest Showman there, it would be their base. But Fox, we know where Fox is. They're that way. And so for theatrical, that's an overnight location, except for their local hires. And that's another thing we talk about a lot, is local hires. Anyway, I think I'm done. Am I done?
One of the questions that came up was a hypothetical of a local hire working Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday are the regular days off. And the question was, what if I work on Sunday? Is that a 6th day or a 7th day? In that particular scenario, that is a 6th day, because when we're talking about 6th and 7th days, we're talking about how many days you worked in the week. So since you had the Saturday off, Sunday is the 6th day, not the 7th day.
And it's important to know that a worked day, a hold day, is included as a work day to determine if you're paid for a premium day worked. And that came into the language finally in 2005. It was just clarifying what everyone agreed ultimately was the correct practice. So if you are on a Monday through Friday work week and you worked on Sunday, but not on Saturday, that would be your 6th day worked in your 7-day work week. And you would get a half-day premium on top of your day's pay for that work on Sunday.
The other thing we're going to talk about is a whole day.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to talk, a whole day counts as a work day, but is 0 hours.
Right.
So the whole day.
That's confusion too.
Yeah.
We've had several questions where people were looking at their work week and wondering why they weren't getting credit for any time toward weekly overtime on a hold day. They'd been told, or they'd thought they had seen, that they would get a full 8 hours credit there, but you do not. So they could work you Monday through Friday with a whole day on Wednesday, 10 hours a day, and that's not 44 hours. So there's no overtime there unless one of those days goes beyond 10. Anytime you work beyond 10 hours, that's daily overtime that's paid out at double time for that day. And that doesn't count toward your weekly time. Your weekly time is only accrued in those 10-hour blocks each day. Now, when you're on an overnight location, the location allowance is 4 additional hours at straight time. It's considered weekly overtime at straight time. So essentially now you have a 48-hour, a 6-day, 48-hour work week. And within the first 10 hours of every day, that has to add up to 48 hours before you kick into weekly overtime. And we'll often see when auditing stunt contracts on big pictures that toward the end of the shoot, there will be 60-hour work weeks where people are getting 12 hours of weekly overtime in addition to their regular pay.
Great, thanks, guys.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question that was presented to me, but before I answer it, everyone in here is a stunt performer, right? Is there anyone in here that's not a stunt performer? Okay, I don't have to answer my question then. Because my question was,
How do I become a stunt performer?
yes, I'd like to know how to get started as a stunt performer. So I think we're all stunt performers in here, and we all know how that road went. You guys, thank you so much. If you have any other questions that come up, please contact Cedric's office, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Thanks for coming tonight.